Hi there, Phil again. This is tip 24.12, growing grapes. Now, because of the constant wind that we've been plagued with this season, I'm actually doing an unusual experiment. I'm actually filming this at night with the use of lights. So I hope it works out all right and it'll add a little bit of a different ambience to this particular tip. Grapes are quite an amazing crop to grow really, because you can grow quite a significant crop out of an area which is usually unproductive in your garden, such as along a fence line or on the side of your veranda, as in this case here. This grapevine I only have one on my property, produces an amazing amount of fruit that I could use for wine making or for dessert if I prefer. I do suggest that if you're buying a grapevine, you do talk to your local garden store about it. They will know the varieties that are suited to your particular location. In reality, grapes are not a particularly demanding crop. They're not particularly choosy about their fertility. They generally prefer not to be in too strong a wind. However, usually if you're growing them on a structure, such as this veranda or on a boundary fence, then there will be a reasonable amount of shelter from the wind. The other thing is, grapevines add an amazingly Mediterranean flavour to your garden. So my courtyard here has been developed on the basis of a Provençal look, and grapes certainly enhance that. It's an amazingly vigorous plant. This one I have here is over 20 metres long, or about 70 feet, from just about the back of my section right up to my house. To grow grapes, you do need a strong structure, which could be, as I say, a boundary fence, or as here, the overhead veranda in my property, or a pergola would be another form of structure. This structure may actually help to prevent late frosts from damaging the flowers, as that is a time of the year when they are a little bit at risk of damage from frost. To your structure, you would generally provide a strong horizontal wire, as I'm showing here, usually about 1.5 metres or 5 feet above the ground. This makes management easier. I ensure that both the cane and the wire can be lowered in my case, should I wish to paint the structure. Allow the plant to grow a trunk, as I'm showing here, from which the lateral vines will grow. You can see here that I have allowed 2 trunks, that is fine. There is a lot of old bark on the trunk, which may harbour pests over winter. It can be removed with a strong brush or such like. As I grow a lot of companion plants, see my tips under section 10, pest control, I've never had trouble with insect pests, so I don't bother. Note that the trunk is an attractive addition to the garden. The key thing to remember with grapevines is that fruit are only produced from new wood that grows from the previous year's growth. I'll repeat that because it is vital. Fruit are only produced from new wood that grows from the previous year's growths. Otherwise you will get little or no fruit. On the other hand, if you don't prune the vine at all, this will result in an unmanageable jungle, as I'm showing here. There are 2 main methods of pruning. Cane pruning, this is the method which is usually used in commercial orchards, and it is a way of getting maximum productivity for the minimum amount of time effort. However, it is a method whereby you plant a number of plants quite close together, and in the domestic environment you really probably prefer not to do this. As I mentioned, my one here, it covers just about the entire length of my section from one plant, and it only took a couple of years to grow like that. So unless you have a desire to grow grape varietals to make boutique wines or such like, I wouldn't really recommend that method. So what I'm going to suggest instead is the spur pruning method. What you are doing here is growing permanent cordons or fruiting arms. The reason that I promote the spur pruning method is that with a little care you can create this permanent structure festooned with gorgeous foliage and then fruit through the growing season. Even the bare trunks in winter create an atmospheric ambience. From the main trunk, select 2 laterals, one in each direction, which you will train along the wire. These will be your permanent cordons or fruiting arms. My grapevine was planted and trained about a decade or so ago. However, I could extend it for next season if I wished by selecting these strong young stems for training along the wire. They can be allowed to extend over following years until they have covered the entire length of your wire structure. My single vine, as I mentioned, extends for about 20 metres or so and would happily grow further if I allowed it. From these cordons, more or less vertical stems will develop during the growing season. These will be the parts of the plant that will actually produce the fruit. In the following winter, cut the canes back, leaving about 2 buds on each. These will then produce fruiting wood during the following season. Thin these spurs so they are spaced about 15 centimetres or 6 inches along the cordon. The spurs can be maintained for some years, pruning them back each winter to leave about 2 buds on a strong cane. Over time you can gradually remove the spurs to younger shoots, rejuvenating them so that they will be semi-permanent. Otherwise you can actually start new spurs from shoots from the cordon. I'll use the spur as an example of long-term management. I show here in late summer the bunches of fruit growing on current year's wood, in turn growing from short stems which are from last year, or the previous year's growth. The short bit that I'm holding and that I trimmed to 2 buds last winter. So in the coming winter I can prune the current year's stem to 2 buds as I'm showing. However, we don't want the spurs to get too long if we can help it. I might be inclined to cut the knobble off to the green shoot that has developed from lower down the spur, meaning that I have reduced the size of the spur. I might also remove the second side spur where I'm indicating, as I only need a single growth from each spur. I suggest that you pause and replay the section of this tip so that you are clear about what I'm showing. You can do this pruning very quickly once you have your eye in. A further stage of the training regime is summer pruning. If you allow unrestricted growth of the laterals, you will have a jungle of foliage, amongst which the fruit will disappear. After the fruit is set and the vines are growing vigorously beyond the fruit, periodically prune the extension growth to 1 or 2 leaves beyond the fruit. This may need to be done several times over summer. This process will allow sunlight into the vines to ripen the clusters of grapes and reduce the risk of disease. Once you get into a rhythm, this can be done very quickly. I find it an enjoyable activity. I then spread the prunings as a mulch over my vegetable garden. They break down in no time and contribute to the fertility of my soil. See my tip 7.8, sheet composting. Birds, particularly blackbirds, do love grapes. You may have to net the vines when the fruit is ripening. Watch my tip 10.3, pest barriers in the garden, for some ideas. Growing the vines on a fence makes setting up the netting relatively simple. I don't actually bother to net the fruit generally. The colossal crop that I get means that I really don't have to go to the trouble. So I hope this inspires you to grow your own grapes. It really is very satisfying to be able to pick your grapes in your own garden. You can also use them for a range of other options in your cuisine. So thanks very much for watching this through to the end. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so that you're sure to see other tips as they become available, and also like this tip for the same reason. So thanks again.